Is Brian Hooker spending Lynette's money? In fact, where is he? Remember this?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
But just hours later, he was back in the U.S.
Again, where is he? Why isn't he searching for his wife? He hired an attorney. That can't be cheap. Is he spending her money? There has been reports that Lynette had money. She had a lot of money. She had a big 401k from her time at AT&T. She had life insurance, and they sold their house. They both owned that yacht, which is now in the hands of authorities. He tried to have it moved, allegedly. Was he planning on selling it?
And then there's something called the Slayer rule, which prevents a person from benefiting from potentially any kind of criminal activity. So they'll probably enact that.
Maybe Lynette was his meal ticket. Maybe she was planning on leaving him. She bought a plane ticket, according to her daughter. And of course, you're checking in. How often are you checking in with investigators? Are you checking in with just the Coast Guard and the search team, or are you also checking in with police?
I've been mostly checking in with the Coast Guard right now. I know my grandma is talking to the FBI, so she's more has more connections right now, talking to her.
How's that going? Has she shared anything, the latest with FBI or the federal search?
Yeah, they are the ones that found my mom's plane ticket back a month ago when she was planning on coming home, a one-way ticket. And so they're starting to dive into their records and stuff.
Do you think that he knew about the ticket?
I'm sure, because I think they have a joint account. I think they have separate accounts. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he didn't know about it.
Was the ticket surprising to you? Did you know about it?
I did not know about it. Sorry, the ticket happened right after I left, so I thought they were fine when I left, but then this happened a couple days after I left, so it was surprising.
This is what Lynette's mom shared with CBS.
Darlene Hamlet is Lynette's mother.
I wish it were over. It's not having answers is extremely stressful. I haven't heard from him.
Is it odd to you that he hasn't contacted you at all?
That he's innocent, yeah. She says, I can't take any more, Mom. Get on a plane and come home. She says, I want my stuff. And I said, I want you. She bought a ticket, but she never came.
I have a very special guest on the program, someone that understands white-collar crime, someone that understands insurance fraud and investigations after a person goes missing, or if they're declared dead, if their death is contested, if it is suspicious. He's going to answer a lot of our questions. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode. Now, the case of missing Lynette Hooker. Here to help break it all down, we have a very special guest who's very knowledgeable in this world and is going to help make sense of all of this. We have Eric Elkins, founder of Double E Financial and host of the 1% Show podcast. Thanks for your time. And I know that we don't have the actual documents, the legal documents, the financials, but when we are talking about the Lynette Hooker case, in general, people have questions about this topic. So I'm putting that out there right away. When someone is missing, does their loved one, in this case, their spouse, have access to their financials right away?
It depends on the assets. I know that there was supposedly this $250,000 life insurance policy that was taken out, supposedly, I guess, 6 months ago. Typically, one of the issues with an insurance policy is you have a 2-year contestability clause. So that would be an issue to have access to that money because it's only been 6 months. So most likely the insurance company is going to do an investigation and they're going to hold back and freeze that opportunity to see if he was the beneficiary, he's not going to have access to that money. They'll do an investigation, and even if he's acquitted, he still potentially might not get that money and go to the estate.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the assets, and then we're going to talk about, life insurance versus 401k. You're talking more about the life insurance, right? So there's no access to life insurance right away, and especially if someone hasn't been declared dead, if they're just missing. So what's the process for that?
They'll typically, most financial institutions are going to freeze the assets, like 401k. I think he potentially, any kind of joint accounts that they have, probably he has access to, at least today, but potentially they could be frozen while they're during this investigation. But typically everyone's going to freeze. It's not going to be where he just has access. They give him the money, or he has access to the money, and then and then potentially come back and take the money back. They won't do that. Typically, they're going to freeze those assets. He's not going to have access to them.
Does someone have to be declared legally dead, and how long of a process is that when we're talking about life insurance?
So there's one of the big issues with this case is that it was 6 months that this policy was taken out, and you had the 2-year contestability. If we were past the 2-year contestability, then a death certificate would be filed, a claims report would be filed to the insurance company, and he really would be able to get that money if he's so-called the beneficiary. But because of this 6-month issue, this is going to be an investigation by the insurance company, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes with the criminal, as him being a suspect. So this could take a year. It could take even longer than that. And even if, like I said, even if he is acquitted, he's still potentially, in some of these cases, if the insurance company, they feel like there's some guilt involved there, then they have the right to potentially, because of the 6-month contestability, they have the right to just provide that money to the estate.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as to if foul play is suspected, because we do know that the husband in this case, when we're speaking hypothetically about it, because again, we don't have the actual financials, but he was taken into questioning, not charged, but he was in questioning for 5 days. And then he fled the Bahamas back to the United States, and we haven't heard from him since. But that answers the question about foul play there. And it kind of freezes the process, I guess, for the insurance company. Is that right?
Yeah, if she, supposedly she has this 401k money from AT&T, that'll be frozen. Even if he attempts to put a claim in to get this money, it doesn't matter. It will be frozen. Most of these assets, no one will have access to.
In this case, they sold their home and they were living aboard their yacht. I know that we're dealing with international waters here, but just in general speaking, in most cases, what happens to the large assets? Say the husband and wife are both on the title of a home or a boat or a car. What happens to that?
Potentially, it's going to fall back, because they're U.S. citizens. It's going to fall back to the rules and laws of the U.S., even though this potentially happened. And again, all that will have to go through potentially probate and settlement, and a court will decide, depending on what happens to him. If he's acquitted, he's going to have access to those assets. Not necessarily the life insurance policy. That's a little. If he really did do something inappropriate here, one mistake he made is if they got this insurance policy strategically, you needed to wait 2 years, because the insurance company has the power on that piece. The 401k money, most likely, if he's acquitted, that would go to him, because he's most likely the beneficiary, unless he signed a consent to release himself, which who knows? I don't know if he did or didn't. These other assets, home, cars, things like that, if they're joint, and that's going to all be decided by court. But if he's acquitted and he's not involved in this, then there's a good shot that'll all go to him.
What does an investigation look like by an insurance agency or just any firm that pays out? Do they do an investigation like police, or do they rely on a police investigation?
Both. They have their staff and folks behind the scenes that'll do a very thorough investigation. They're going to check everything from her health records, but to make sure that there was nothing, out of the norm with her health records. They're going to go very in depth. They have their own investigation team, their own third-party resources that they will use, and then they will also take advantage of anything that's privy to them through the criminal investigation, if there is one.
Do they also take a look at social media posts by the couple?
It's a good question. I don't know if most likely I would guess they probably do because it's public information. But I don't know for sure on that. I would think
that's fine. And then also, in this case or in high profile cases in general, so you have the husband who did a couple interviews, and then you have the daughter who did her own interviews. I'm sure as part of the investigation and thoroughness, they take that into account as well. So let's talk about the Coast Guard. They're a main part of the search, and I'm very happy to hear that, they're the best, our military members. But it's so sad that they haven't been able to find any key evidence or find your mom so what have you been told by the men and women with the Coast Guard?
When they talked to me, they mostly talked to my grandma about most things, but they did tell me about that they handed over everything and that they're going there tomorrow. They came over to my house to ask questions for a couple hours. So yeah, that's really it.
What were they asking you?
They were just trying to gather all the facts of everything I knew about him and their relationship, because I felt like there was more to the story of her just falling overboard.
Yeah, what'd they ask you about the relationship, and what came to mind? What did you share with them?
I shared their past history of domestic violence and child abuse from Brian.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, number one, but I've also seen some reports about that. So what has your grandma and your mom's friends, and what have you witnessed in their relationship? Because they've been together for how long?
About 25 years.
So what can you share about that, about these allegations of domestic violence?
I did witness him choking out his daughter when I was in 3rd grade. I was a witness in court for that. I did witness him choke out my mom and throw her out of my room one night when they were heavily drinking. And then she called the cops, and then she's the one that went to jail because there was blood on Brian's face, I guess. So they took her away instead. And then I know 2 years ago they broke up. He threatened to kill her and was choking her out and to throw her overboard. So the fact that this is happening 2 years later is a little suspicious.
And I know that my friend Ashley Banfield has been reporting on the case quite a bit too. And I know that she talked to your grandma and also had those pictures of what appeared to be bruises.
Yeah. She had pictures of my mom with bruises on her back after a fight. My mom never told me about that, and I didn't know those pictures existed until recently. So my mom tried to keep that stuff away from me. She'd try not to show relationship problems unless they were actually going to break up. Then she told me, but fights and all that, she didn't really include me in that.
That must be really hard to think about and to see right now, especially in this moment where your mom's missing and you feel helpless.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sorry about that too. But I think that it's important that you're sharing this information with the authorities so that they can, better ask him questions.
He called me Sunday night between 8 and 8:30 that she was missing, 25 hours after the fact. And
25.
yeah, he sounded very monotone, no emotion. And then he told me, yeah, she's missing, by the way, and didn't really seem like it was that important. What I know is that she fell in and he threw a flotation device to her, and then they drifted apart, and then he paddled away. That's all I know.
Yeah, and then there's been questions about, so they were on a dinghy, right? Walk me through what they were on, where they had left, and where they were going.
They were at Elbow Cay, and their boat was at Marsh Harbor. So they took the dinghy to Elbow Cay to go to a restaurant, which is kind of far away, I think like a couple miles. And then they were heading, and I think they moved their sailboat actually, or I think, yeah, they moved their sailboat next to Elbow Cay. And so on the way back, she fell in. They were in Marsh Harbor, then they moved to near Elbow Cay.
Do you want to see him?
No. This is too suspicious. Like, I care about him because he's been in my life since I was 4, and I really wish I didn't grow up with someone that's capable of doing this, but yeah, I don't know.
So you think he did something?
I think this is just, I have theories that he possibly could have. I have all the what ifs in my head, but to believe that she just fell off and he just said bye, didn't even try, it just screams suspicious.
When it comes to the insurance company, in my opinion, the insurance company has tremendous leverage, and all because of the rules and backing of what's been established for centuries is that contestability clause. And then there's something called the Slayer rule, which prevents a person from benefiting from potentially any kind of criminal activity. So they'll probably enact that.
I really wanted to talk to you because I was talking to Eric Bland about Murdaugh the other day, and it's really the financials that landed him in prison. And he admitted to all of that, and that was a big part of the murder trial. And then also it was a big part of the trial too with Lori Vallow Daybell out in Idaho, who was accused of killing her kids, convicted. And then she was using the insurance money. So I really feel like the financials get intertwined in a lot of these cases that we cover.
I think, but you know what's kind of strange with this, and again, I'm not saying if that policy was $250,000, we're not talking about tremendous sums of money here. At least on that insurance side. And then from what I've read, and you Matt, you know way better than I do, it was supposedly like $700,000 in her 401k. If that was traditional 401k money, I'm saying non-Roth 401k money, then that's not even worth $700,000, because anything he would to withdraw from that, he's going to owe ordinary income taxes. Let's just say there's no issues involved here. He would be penalized if he accessed that money on top of the ordinary income tax. So it's not like this would be some kind of life-changing amount of money. That's just how I look at this. I'm not trying to be this investigator or Columbo, but that's how I kind of look at it. Like, if he did it and he was guilty of this, I don't necessarily know if his motive was money. It just seems a little odd. There's just not that much money here. And one other thing that would be interesting, and I don't know, again, the answer to this, is whether or not he was the owner of the insurance policy or she was the owner. Because if
so from what I'm hearing, I believe that she was the owner and may have changed it. But again, We're just kind of looking at this from an outside perspective. There's just been so many questions online as to the process and if he could be living off of her money right now. I think that that's what a lot of the viewers wanted to learn.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I couldn't answer for sure, but it's one, even if he's assumed innocent, he's not going to have access to this money for a long time, for over 12 to, if I had to guess, 24 months minimum that he'd have access to this money. And I would bet a 50-50 that he's not even going to have access to the $250,000 period on the life insurance. If they find enough things and evidence to bother the insurance company, then they're going to most likely give that money to the estate or to her daughter, would be my guess.
Yeah, even though she was married, Lynette Hooker, who is missing right now, if they find a body, if they determine no foul play, or if it's determined in that way, does it go to the daughter or would it still go to the husband?
If he's not guilty, then most of these assets will go to him, assuming he's the beneficiary. With the exception, the life insurance is just that question mark, because the insurance company, even if he's acquitted or not found innocent, they still could go after. And the insurance company could still say, we found enough evidence that we find that this is squirrely and not making sense, but we'll still pay the benefit, but we're just going to pay to who was listed as contingent beneficiary, which could be her daughter, or if there wasn't one mentioned, then it would default to the estate and how her will was addressed and things like that, which again could fall back to the daughter.
What kind of questions do you have about this case just in general, and what are you going to be watching for as you read the headlines?
When I watch his mannerisms on those interviews that he's done, I mean, for me, and this is just, my personal feelings on it, it means nothing. He seems awkward. He seems guilty. But again, I always say, I'm fortunately, knock on wood, I've never had cancer. So I don't know what it's like to have cancer. And I have no intent to ever hurt or abuse my spouse. So I don't know how you would react in these kind of situations, because I've never had these things happen. But he just seems strange to me, where he just seems a little guilty-ish, let's just say. But that doesn't mean he is. I don't have enough facts or evidence on this to state that. But the other piece, I struggle with, I just don't see the money being such a major motive here. It's just not life-changing money that we're talking about. And if he was involved in this insurance policy in regards to, usually, like in our world, when we sell a life insurance policy, we make sure we explain there is a 2-year contestability clause. So if you commit suicide, this money is not going to pay out if you do it within the first 2 years. If you commit fraud, you have cancer, you've been going to Mexico for therapy, and you die within the first 2 years, that insurance company is going to do an investigation to make sure that there is not fraud involved, et cetera. So hopefully whoever sold the policy said this to them. And so that makes me also go, I just don't see you would hope that he would have known that if he is guilty, that's where I just kind of get hooked up, where I just don't know if he did do this, was it really about the money? That would be that's where I'm kind of interested. And, when I look at this, it's going to be probably very difficult if he was guilty, it's going to be very difficult to figure that out, especially if they don't find a body. So it's an interesting case that I'll, tune into, and I'll continue watching you, because I know you do a great job, going over these type of cases. So, in a long story short, that's my answer.
Well, thank you for your time on all of this. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm right there with you. Everybody is with you on the sense that we just can't figure this one out. It's not cut and dry. It's very confusing. Nothing makes sense, including his story. So yeah, I'm right there with you. How can we get a hold of you and follow you, Eric?
So I have, and thank you for having me on. First off, I didn't even get to say that at the beginning, but I have a podcast called The 1% Show. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, etc. And it's not about crime. It's about what the 1% folks are doing in this country today that the 99% aren't willing to do, and how they're propelling and getting financially succeeding as well as personally succeeding. So that's the motive of that show. And then I also have my financial company called Double E, which you can reach out via www.doublellc.com. The word double, D-O-U-B-L-E, two E's in the middle, LLC.com. Matt, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I thoroughly enjoyed and love what you do.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Let's keep Lynette's family in our thoughts and prayers as they navigate through all of this. Hopefully they get answers soon. I'll keep you updated, so please hit the subscribe if you haven't already. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.